house, the home of the National Book League. It's based in Wandsworth in South London, and from here people all over the United Kingdom can get help to find out about books, both old and new. Hello, I'm Liz Estenson, and this is Middle Pages, the programme that takes a look at books and the people who write them. Today we're going to be looking at the work of someone who not only writes books but also illustrates them as well. We're going to meet artist and storyteller Michael Foreman. But first of all, we're going to consider the problem of how you go about choosing a book from all the millions that are available. A good place to start is right here, in a special room upstairs. Each year, the National Book League mounts a special exhibition of books published during the past year. And it publishes a special book of its own to go with the exhibition, Children's Books of the Year. It's really a guide to reading, a catalogue of over 300 books, which represent the best of every kind of new publication available. Fact books, practical books, fiction and illustrated books. Reading is a very personal matter. We all have different interests and tastes. Sorting out what we like and where to find it can be quite a difficult task. There are literally millions of books around in shops and libraries. In 1980 alone, over 3,500 of them were published just for young people. The exhibition and the guide sort out books into age groups, but they can only be a rough guide. If you're really interested in a subject, you might try something in the range above your age group. There are plenty of adults who get a great deal of pleasure in reading books intended for people much, much younger than themselves. So the best thing to do is have a browse, and don't be afraid to pick books up and have a really good look at them. One place to start might be with a writer you've already heard of. You can usually get an idea of what's in a book by flicking through it and reading the inside front cover. The nice thing about book exhibitions, and this one travels all over the country, is that there are lots of new books because no one can buy them or borrow them. You can read the books that are there and find out about the ones that aren't there as well. Sometimes an author has only written one book, but quite often there are more, and these are listed at the back of the book, usually with a brief description of each one. Buying books can be an expensive business, especially when you find that the one you've spent your money on isn't quite what you thought it was.
That's 90p, please.
And at present time, like birthdays, it's not a bad idea to have an idea about the sort of books you'd like. It's often no easier for other people to decide what you'd like than it is for you, and a few helpful hints might just be appreciated. Often people find books when they're very young that stay important to them for the rest of their lives, and they tend to hang on to the copies long after they've become old and battered. Well, I've got a couple of my own favourites here. The Wind in the Willows. When I was small, I went to see a production of Toad Hall and dashed off and read the book, The Wind in the Willows, and it's been a firm favourite ever since. And another book here that I'm sure many of you have read, or at least heard of, Alice in Wonderland. Wonderful book. The National Book League has a section of old books, as well as this room here, which is a very up-to-date reference library. The children's librarian is Beverly Mathias. Beverly, I noticed in the books of the year that old favourites like The Wind in the Willows and Little Grey Rabbit have been published yet again.
Yes, they have. There is now a paperback edition of Little Grey Rabbit. Books like these remain firm favourites with generation after generation of children. And it's a good idea to talk to your parents and to relatives and perhaps older friends about what they enjoyed when they were children.
Yes, but isn't it a good thing to read new books as well?
Yes, of course it is. And you can do that in the exhibition because there are many authors and illustrators there that you may not have heard about. And you can hire that exhibition if you talk to your teacher.
Great. If you'd like more information about the National Book League for your school, we'll give you an address to write to at the end of the programme. You may remember me mentioning that every year about 3,500 books are published just for young people. There's someone who takes a look at a very sizable chunk of that pile and writes reviews and advises people on children's books is Elaine Moss. Elaine, do you find it difficult to choose books?
Yes, I do. I think everybody finds it difficult to choose books. And the thing to do if you're not sure about what to read next is to ask for advice. For instance, everybody sitting in classrooms now has probably got an expert within an arm's breadth of them, because there's always somebody in every class who loves reading adventure stories or school stories or science fiction or books about sport or animals. So the thing to do is to ask your neighbour, even perhaps get a collection of books that go round and round the classroom. Also, of course, there are television programmes like this, which we hope do help. And then you can go to your local library, where, of course, the children's librarian knows all about what's inside the covers of books.
Yes, now what about libraries? They're certainly very different places now from when I was little.
Oh, yes, they're certainly much more relaxed. You don't feel you've got to hush your voice as you go in the door any longer. And besides reading the books, there are certainly every holidays programmes of things that you can do, like chess competitions and puppets and drama, and very often storytelling sessions.
Some of you may have had a visit from a writer at school, or you might have gone along to the library or a book exhibition completely off your own bat in order to meet one. I certainly do think it's very interesting to be able to put a real live face to a name on a book and find out how they work. Well, that's exactly what we and quite a lot of other people have been doing at the Book League's exhibition, where Michael Foreman found himself surrounded by people anxious to help him with the art of illustrating. We asked him how he first started his work.
The reason I started doing books was because I was trained as a painter, but I also needed to earn some money to pay the rent. And so I started illustrating my own ideas. And unfortunately, the first few ideas I came up with were also liked by the publishers as much as they liked the drawings. And so suddenly I had a book published. And I thought, well, this is going to be a great way to spend my life. And the next 6 books I did were all rejected. And it was 6 years later before another one was finally accepted.
But it wasn't time wasted for Michael Foreman. An artist by training and a storyteller at first by chance, he has used his many journeys abroad to capture sights and experiences. He records detailed impressions of everything he sees, like a photograph album but with paintings and drawings. Memories from foreign lands become books for the future, the material on which his stories are based.
While in these countries, you do see all kinds of scenery, landscape, which gives you background material, and which you would like to use at some point in a book, and sometimes this material lays around for several years. At any one time, you might have half a dozen ideas for books, but you can only obviously do one at a time. And so the one which is most relevant at that time is the one you decide to do. And it's relevant because of things that are happening elsewhere in your life, in everybody's lives, in the rest of the world.
Well, they do say that travel broadens the mind. And a journey by train across India gave Michael Foreman the idea for a book which is certainly funny, but has also a serious side.
At the time I had food poisoning and could only eat bananas. At least bananas were the only things I dared eat because they seemed to be sealed, and very hot tea. But I was on my way to Sikkim, a very small country in the Himalayas, and that's the country on which the legend of Shangri-La is based, which is supposed to be the closest thing to paradise. So it was strange going through a country where there was a good deal of starvation towards a country which was reputed to be full of everything that one could desire. So the idea of a country with nothing being next to a very wealthy neighbor, plus the actual geographic situation of a flat country going to a very mountainous one, gave me the idea for War and Peace.
King Lion looked at his country and was sad. Nothing could grow, and there was nothing left to eat. In a nearby country, there was plenty of food. King Lion told his people he would have to ask their rich neighbor for help. As they approached the city, they were much impressed by the richness of everything. "Surely they have more than they need," said the grocer hopefully. But the king of that country was fat and greedy and sent his soldiers to arrest them. "Sire, I am a king like yourself," began the lion.
Never!
Yelled the fat king.
You're too thin to be a king. Lock them up!
War and Peace had a serious message, And so too does Panda's puzzle. Panda is another traveller in Michael Foreman's imagination. His journey, though, is not to search for food, rather it's to find out who he really is.
And Panda seemed to be a character who was in some doubt as to his own person. He didn't know if he was a white bear with black bits or a black bear with white bits. So that brought in an obvious racial problem. And in order to try and discover himself, he had to go and ask the wise men in various countries in the world. And so I used locations where I'd been myself and where I had original drawings and sketches as background for these pictures.
The settings for Panda and his search for his identity stretch from Sikkim to Japan and Egypt to New York. He had found empty food cans left by untidy travellers. The pictures were of ships and cities and scenes unlike any he had seen. There's more in the world than the ups and downs of mountain life, thought Panda. Indeed, there was a lot more, as he soon found out. But no one could tell him whether he was black and white or white and black. He went to the central library, where they had books about everything. He was thrown out for making a noise. Panda had many adventures and conversations before he returned once more to a temple of music. And by now he was finally content. "I'm a traveller who plays tunes," he explained happily. "So is the wind," said the old man. "But are you a black bear or a white bear?" "I don't care," laughed Panda. From Michael Foreman's diaries and sketchbooks have come a whole range of comments about modern life. Everything is material to be turned into a story, and this one, Tricker Tracker, uses skateboards as its inspiration.
It tells a rather ridiculous story of how animals, many, many years ago, invented skateboards as a device to outwit the trackers. The advantage with a skateboard is that when you see the track, you don't know if it's coming or going. And this obviously would confuse anybody following the tracks. This was so successful that the animals were invited to various parts of the world to show off their skills, and stadiums were built here and there. For instance, the pyramids in Egypt were stadiums for skateboard feats, and the stone heads in Easter Island were the slalom courses for these ancient skateboard aces. Sadly, it disappears after a while, and it's only recently that skateboards have come into our knowledge again.
It seems a lot of young people think that picture books or illustrated books are a bit babyish. I must say I can't see anything babyish in these stories, and the illustrations are absolutely delightful, aren't they?
Yes, they're delightful and they're lots of fun. And as you can see, there's a huge variety of them. It seems to me a thousand pities if just because you're a good reader, you feel you've got to miss out on the pictures.
Well, some of you may be lucky enough to see the National Book League's annual exhibition this summer near you. But whether you are or not, it is worth investigating the local library to see what they've got on offer. Because, you know, if you think you don't like reading, it could just be that you haven't found the right books yet. Bye from us.